According to sources from ESPN, that's Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, the tag will be placed on edge Josh Allen. No surprise, but I'll talk about all the ramifications here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, Tony Wiggins. You can find us over on YouTube at the Locked On Jaguars page. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and then hit that bell so you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. Also, wherever you get your audio podcast, make sure you tap into that location to make sure that you do not miss an episode of Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And a quick shout out to the everydayers for joining the show. We thank you for joining us every day. And you can be an everyday. All you got to do is join us every single day. All right, reports will come out. I tried to wait as long as I could. I tried to wait until the 4 p.m. deadline to give you exacts instead of reports from sources. But I was just sitting here, and Jeremy Fowler, who I really respect from ESPN, just reported that Josh Allen's going to get tagged. He said the sources tell him Josh Allen's going to get tagged, and he's going to have the franchise tag because they're working towards the deal. They did not reach that deal. However, right now, which is about 90 minutes away, well, if that much, about 96 minutes away from the deadline for teams to tag people. There's some ramifications. We'll talk about that here in segment one that involves not only him, but Calvin Ridley. All right, the good and the bad of that scenario, those scenarios, and there's several of them, and we'll definitely discuss that. It's not all bad. I guess being in this position sort of makes it all bad, but it's not all bad. And then Locked On NFL Draft, they did a mock draft, my man Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, and they made a pick. I'm going to discuss that pick. I don't agree with it. I like the player, but I don't agree with it because of my philosophy of doing mocks, and I'll tell you about all of that too when we get to segment 3. But first, the big report that Josh Allen will be tagged. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody that if they did not work out a long-term deal, that they were going to tag Josh Allen. You don't let a 26-year-old edge rusher with his ability hit the open market. You just don't do it. I mean, the guy's the all-time leader for Jacksonville in sacks, and he's done that in 5 seasons. He had 17 and a half sacks this year. Good guy on and off the field. Big, strong, decent ball player. There was a sentiment that I had about, and I'm not going to take this personally because I've seen a couple of people post this. There was some sentiment that I had last year about trading Josh Allen and not extending Josh Allen. And here's why I felt that way. Just in case anyone is listening to this podcast for the first time, I won't assume that everybody's an everydayer. The reason why I felt that way, and the reason why I feel that it's necessary to explain this, because there's some narratives out there by some people that, well, this is a lot different than what people were talking about last year. And like I said, I'm not going to take it personal because I want to take it personal. I pick the phone up and I call them. But I will tell you this. I'm one of those people. And the reason why I'm one of those people is because I didn't want them in this position they're in right now. And what that is they're going to probably, as good as I think Josh Allen is, they're going to have to overpay him because I think he's going to want to reset the market, him along with Danielle Hunter. They're going to have to overpay him. I want him to get a deal done earlier. But if it wasn't the right deal, I wanted them to trade him. I wanted them to trade him while he still had that value high, while there was still a chance that whoever traded for him could realize that they could tag him one time and pay him on a contract, because then the Jaguars would have gotten maybe a first-round pick for him. That's what I honestly believe, right? You tag him now, and if somebody wants him, they're going to have to give you probably 2 first-round picks if it's non-exclusive, if you don't match it, if you're Jacksonville. What I really wanted to see the Jags do was do something instead of having something done to them. Be proactive and do something. If you don't feel that he's worth it, that he's the number one guy, then trade him while everybody else probably thinks he is. If you do feel that he's the number one guy, then treat him accordingly and sign him then and offer him a deal back then so you don't get to the point where you are now, where now he's got you. I mean, he has got the vice grips on you, man, and he can squeeze them as hard as he wants to and get everything out of you, right? If you tag him and think you're not going to reach a deal with him, good luck to getting him to play hurt the way he did last year. And he had every incentive to play hurt because he was trying to get those numbers up, push the team into the playoffs, and have a good year in a contract year. I get it. But he did it. And he actually did it. He didn't pretend to play well. He actually did play well. So you put yourself in a position now, if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, where you're always behind everything. And I want them to have their finger on the pulse of this team so much that they make decisions and choices before they even have to be made. And this is the problem with them as an organization. So I'll talk more about that in segment 2. But this is almost as if, like, what else you gonna do? You ain't gonna let him walk. So I can't give him a pat on the back for tagging him because this is like a no-brainer. It's like there's nothing else for them to do, right? And that's the Jaguars. They always make a move and make a decision when there is no decision and move to be made other than not doing anything at all. This is the issue that I have with them. So to answer that question, or to take the mystery out of it, if people want to think that it was me, yeah, you damn right I said trade him and don't pay him and trade him, because I already knew how they felt about him because of what people have told me. And those people ain't just media people. Those are people that's in the building, that have been in the building, folks that know people who are coaches, how they don't feel that way about that young man. I tell you what, they like him so much, and I did a thread this morning on X, that they like him so much, and they like Trayvon so much, they're still telling you what you already know, and that is they need more edge. This is coming from the GM that drafted Trayvon, and rightfully so, I would have too, that has now franchise tagged or will franchise tag Josh Allen, and they still need more edge. You could always use more edge, but they need more edge, right? With the way that they're going to play. And the problem I'm having with this team is every time they sign somebody, it doesn't alleviate a need. They continue to need people at the positions of people that they sign and draft. And to me, that is a no-win situation, man. I just can't put it any clearer. Everyone, not saying that you could use something or need something are two different things. But this team needs, they can't let him go. And now they're going to have to overpay him. And I'm telling you right now, they don't think he's the number one, but they're going to have to pay him like one. This is on them. This is on them. And by them, I mean Trent freaking Baalke. That's who I'm talking about. It's also going to expose them to having Calvin Ridley be able to go out for the first time in his life and become a free agent. Maybe they have a wink deal with him already and say, look, man, let us sign you after the league year. We're willing to give you this right here, but we'll give it to you after the league year. And here, you got it in writing. We won't renege from that. Go out there and see what somebody else offers you. If they come close to it or exceed it, maybe we'll go beyond that and we'll match anything that anybody else does. But we want you, but we just want to keep our second round pick. Contrary to what Trent said is, it doesn't matter about the second or the third round pick, that they're interested in keeping the player. And if you believe that, I got some swampland down in down sort of near Miami and go west that I'll sell you in the Everglades. This team, man, they wish the dude happy birthday and cut him the same day online. I can't make it up. This is just what they do. Messaging is bad. Messaging is all it is just a reflection of who and what they really are. And that's the sad part, because y'all out here sitting thinking that they're going to fix this stuff. They can't fix anything. They're broken. We'll talk more about it in segment 2. Talk about the good and the bad for both Josh Allen and Calvin Ridley. I want to make sure we do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Hey, man, you've ever been in a situation where you knew that you needed some help? That's right, therapy. BetterHelp is the sponsor for today's show, and I couldn't be happier about it because BetterHelp is a place that I have been to get therapy, and it can help you too. Time management. Time management. I learned a long time ago about my 24-hour gauge where you had this much time to rest, this much time to work, and this much time to do with your family. Guess what? Life comes at you fast, and it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes you are so much to so many people that you forget about yourself. So if you need to figure out how you're going to figure out how to do all of those things on a daily basis, make sure you consider therapy at BetterHelp. If you're thinking starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, with Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Shout out to me repping the home team, my boy Lil Duval. This is an old hat. This is a throwback Rich Broke hat I got on here today. But I'm a throwback Lil Duval and Rich Broke fan, so that's why I got it on today. Listen, the good and the bad of this, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you everything's bad because it's not. The good thing is they got exclusive negotiating rights to Josh Allen, and I'm talking about placing the franchise tag on Josh Allen. The bad thing is that means they got about an hour and a half to work out a deal with Calvin Ridley before he hits the open market, and if they work out a deal with him and it gets signed and he's off the market, that means the Jaguars lose their second-round pick, which is pick number 48, I believe. I think it's pick number 48. So that would be the bad. The bad part of that is Calvin Ridley is going to be exposed to free agents for the first time in his life. And he's 29 going on 30 years old. But he was an older player when he came into the league. He's missed the last couple of seasons. He played last year on his, I believe, on his fifth-year option. So the deal now is that you got to deal with all of these teams coming at Calvin Ridley. And I know for the most part, Calvin Ridley knows who the Jaguars are, knows what this city is all about. Calvin Ridley knows if he wants to come back here or not. That's not it, though. You never know what happens when somebody goes. Let me put this mildly, and I'm joking, right? Not if you've been with your girl for a while or your wife. I'm joking, right? But let's say you met this girl, this young lady, and y'all been dating for a couple of months. And then y'all go to NBA All-Star Weekend, and then you recognize somebody that you knew from high school that's an NBA player. And he invites you to all of the events. And you sitting there with your $75,000 a year salary, and you saved up all this money to come there for the weekend. And now you're in a room full of dudes that are making $25 million a year. And they're all 6'8", and they're looking at your girl. You have to wonder, do I really know her? Can I go to the bathroom? If I come back from the bathroom, is she going to be over there at that table with these other people? Or do I know her good enough? Have we spent enough time together I'm quality. If I walk away, I'm going to come back and she's going to still be there. That's the dilemma. And I'm telling you right now, the scenario that I'm thinking in my mind, you are whatever crazy if you take a girl you just met to the NBA All-Star game and end up with a party full of 6'8" millionaires, almost billionaires. And you got your debit card in the pocket with $700 on it, and you think you're going to be able to compete. And what I mean by that is, let me give you, that was just an analogy. So what I mean by that from a football perspective is, he hits free agency, and what of the Kansas City Chiefs just sitting there the same way they did with Juwan Taylor. And I'm almost certain Juwan wanted to come back to Jacksonville. He's a Florida kid. He loves it here. It's an hour and a half away from where he played college ball. They wanted him back. He had a good season, but here comes old money bags, old Kansas City Chiefs, with their team president, their GM, their executive vice presidents, and their entire staff of people. They got an army of about 15 people between their owner and Andy Reid. And here comes Trent Baalke. Between Shad Khan and Doug Peterson, it's him and his assistant. And they got Trevor Lawrence here in Jacksonville, which is cool, right? But everybody knows that Trevor and Calvin had some issues getting on the same page last year. But it's all right. It's all right because, he still threw the ball a lot, right? And it's cool. The Chiefs got Patrick Mahomes. Do I even have to finish the sentence? I'm not worried about Tennessee, and I'm not worried about him going up there playing with Will Levis. If he does, good luck to him, right? I'm a little bit worried about Houston. If they need another receiver to go with Tank Dell, and they have the money, I'm worried about any team that needs a wide receiver. I'm worried about the Chargers, even though they ain't got no money, but they can sure get some here within the next couple of days, right? Or before free agency starts. I'm worried about any team that has a really, really good quarterback. I'm worried about the Bears of all teams. I'm worried about any team that has a bunch of money that has a high draft pick that says, you know what? If we get a receiver, we can use that pick on something else. Oh, yeah, if you're the Chargers and you're able to free up some cap space and you can sign Calvin Ridley, you can use that top 5 pick on the best left tackle in the draft. Sure you can. You don't have to take a receiver now. If you're any of those teams that need wide receivers and you were in the playoffs last year, if you're the Buffalo Bills and you're looking for another receiver on the other side of Stephon Diggs to catch balls from Josh Allen, well, you can use number 28 on something else, an offensive lineman or another edge rusher or another DB, and you can fill that goal instead of re-signing your own guy. You can sign Calvin Ridley. I'm worried about those teams that have guys that are bona fide top 7, top 8 quarterbacks running up to Calvin Ridley and offering him $90 million over 4 years. Because now if you're the Jaguars, you have to make a similar decision that you made with Jawan Taylor. Is he worth that? Is he worth that? And you still are like, he's not really number 1. He's like a 1B, or he's like a really, really good number 2. Right? That's what I'm concerned with. So this is the good and the bad in this. The good is they keep a good player in Josh Allen. And you have to eventually start keeping your guys longer than 2 or 3 years, because that's how you end up building something, right? And the only way you let guys go that you went and signed in free agency is because you got a guy right behind them that's just as good, who's cheaper. Well, they don't have that right now, and they're making all these cuts. They don't have people. They got to go out and find guys. And you're asking the same people that couldn't find people before to find people now, and that doesn't make sense. Think about it. If you're Calvin Ridley, do you want to come back here that bad I think what he needs to do is just look at it from a totally clean slate and say, you know what, I'm a free agent. I can go back to Jacksonville. I've seen what that is. But Patrick Mahomes and Herbert, who I think is overrated, but that's a different story. Josh Allen. Wait a minute. Hold on. What if the Bengals say, you know what, we're going to trade T. Higgins? But we can give you a long-term deal, Calvin. It might not be what T is getting, but you can be a number 2 up here, and they got Burrow and Chase. I mean, just think about it. What happens? What happens when all of these teams are these good teams, these teams that need wide receivers, all of a sudden just come to you and say, we got you covered. You can come here and be a number 2, and we'll pay you $80 million over 4 years, as opposed to, and this is why when you worry about Christian Kirk's contract, this is exactly why you worry about it, because it reset the market to the point where Calvin Ridley right now is a better player than Christian Kirk was when he was a free agent. And Christian Kirk got a 4-year, $72 million deal that everybody in the league thought he was crazy. Now, move ahead, Christian Kirk earned that money, right? He earned it. Good for him and good for the Jaguars. But still, you're going to now pay the price for raising the price, and you had to raise the price in order to get that guy to come here. You had to pay Zay Jones more money than he wanted to come here. Going to talk about this a little bit more in segment 3, but Locked On NFL Draft, the mock draft, has happened, the first one anyway, with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino of Draft Dudes. I'm going to tell you who they picked. Matter of fact, I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to show you the clip of who they picked. I'm going to tell you why I don't really care for it, even though I love those 2 dudes to death. We'll talk about that more here on Locked On Jaguars. And today's sponsor is FanDuel. Today's show is sponsored by FanDuel, man. I had to let you know about FanDuel because FanDuel is the absolute real deal. And you know that if you've been listening to Locked On Jaguars. And I know football season is over, but never you fret about that because basketball season is all about getting buckets, and FanDuel is right there to help you out with that. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Now, you can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. By the way, thank you very much last night. The Lakers blew out OKC. OKC, every time I bet with y'all, I don't win, but that's okay. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sports book partner of the NBA. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. I got another first listen for you, or second listen. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, so before we get back to talking about and finishing off this subject with Josh Allen and Calvin Ridley, what helps you determine whether or not, and it's finally coming across the ticker right now, the Jaguars will place the franchise tag on Josh Allen. So what's happening now is you're starting to look forward to the mock draft. You're looking forward to free agency. You know Josh Allen's going to be on the team, right? You know whatever happens, he's going to be there. I might not like the way he is going to be there because I don't know if he's going to be happy, but you know he's going to be there. You know they've made these cuts, right? So who are they going to take? Today, the Jaguars released Rashawn Jenkins. They cut Darius Williams, the corner. Yesterday, they parted ways with Foley Fadukazi on his birthday. People expect there to be a few more moves, but right now it doesn't seem like there's any. Maybe Brandon Sheriff, but even with him, they like Cooper Hodges, the kid that was on IR last year. They're going to try to bring back Ezra Cleveland, who's a free agent. So the Jaguars have a lot of needs, right? And that's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day when people tell me how close they are and then tell me how many things that they need. They can't draft a corner. They need an interior offensive lineman, and they need more edge depth, and they need another defensive tackle. And what about a big wide receiver? So a team that you can go and ramble 5 things that come across as immediate, big-time needs that they're not as close as you think they are, okay? I'm going to show you right now a clip of what Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs, the draft dudes on Locked On NFL Draft, had to say about who they would take at number 17 in their mock.
But the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock at pick 17. You are on the clock, sir.
I want to pick the player that intrigues me the most. It's Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle from Illinois. I don't know if that's going to be something that people are going to yell at me about. I don't care. Watch his tape. He's dynamic. He's disruptive. He's unlike anything that they have on the interior right now. I think you have this group of Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker, and you complement that with an interior rush of Johnny Newton, and you're going to create a lot of problems for offensive lines and quarterbacks. I think this is – I don't love the depth of the defensive tackle class. I think you go ahead and pick this guy right here. You can find offensive line and wide receiver help later on.
Well, there you go. That's my man Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs from Locked On NFL Draft dudes, 2 guys I have immense respect for in this industry, in this business. And obviously you can tell by listening how great that podcast is. So maybe you need to check that out as well. In fact, I hope you do. But I'm going to disagree with it. I'm going to tell you why. Not that I don't think Johnny Newton is a good player. I absolutely think he's a really, really good player. I wish the Jaguars chose more guys like Johnny Newton. I think it comes down to knowing your GM and knowing what his tendencies are. And as I've told people in the past, especially, I used to say this a lot when I was on radio. It's not about me. It's not about who I think they'll take or think they should take. It's who I think they will take because of their tendencies, their history, the things that they tend to lead with in terms of their evaluation. And they are traits people. This is a traits staff. That's not a bad thing. And I want people to understand that, because there's this thing that came out about whether or not the Jags needed an executive vice president. And the first thing that people want to point to where they did that with Coughlin and it failed. That's because it failed once doesn't mean it's a bad thing. That's like saying a team that runs a 4-3, well, we failed at that, so I don't ever want to do it again. No, maybe you just had the wrong people driving the bus. It's not something that I believe is a bad thing. I actually think it's a good thing. I don't think it's new. I think people have done it before. I said it all along. I grew up hearing about how the Dallas Cowboys always drafted the biggest, strongest, fastest guys and said, we'll figure out all of the other stuff later on. And that was by a Hall of Fame trio in Tex Schramm, Tom Landry, and of course, Gil Brandt. So Jimmy Johnson used to have this thing where he said, just get a bunch of linebackers and running backs and you'll figure out your team. When he was in college, that's what he said. He drafted speed. So people have things that they lead with. The problem I have with Trent Baalke is I don't think he knows when to calm that down a little bit. Like, okay, I get the Trayvon Walker pick, and I'm all for that. I love Trayvon Walker as a player, right? But some of these other picks, when you draft traits and you, like, I think they took Brenton Strange and Tank Bigsby because of their physicality. Yeah, but there were other people that were better football players than they were. And you probably should have done that, because you cherry pick two guys for physicality, and then the biggest weakness that you say they have right now, which is almost a year later, is that they're not big and physical enough. So that tells you can't fix something like that with one draft. That's just not the way this works. And I don't want the Jaguars trying to fix themselves just for one season. A season that I believe they have to play better and everybody has to win, or those guys are going to be gone, which is why I didn't want them staying here in the first place, with the exception of Doug Peterson. I think he deserves a little bit better support than he has gotten. But the thing is this is the problem with stuff like that, man. Whenever you do things for 1 year, it turns into a dynasty football situation instead of being what's best for the team. You should always do what's best for the team. And I think sometimes this GM doesn't do that. I think it's about too much about the thing that he leads with. It's one thing to lead with something, but it's another thing to be stuck on it. And I think he is stuck on certain things. Don't y'all find it ironic that the traits guy has a football team that he says isn't physical enough? That's almost like an oxymoron in thought. If you're drafting for physical traits, shouldn't your team be physical? I'm just guessing that, yeah, maybe, right? So this is where you got to be a little bit careful. But I like Johnny Newton as a player. If it were me, yeah, I'd take him in a heartbeat, because we'd be running a 4-3 with a 3 technique and a zero guy right in front of that center and playing those. And we turn Johnny Newton loose with Trayvon and with Josh Allen. But for Trent, I don't think it's going to be the right pick. And plus, I think they're going after guys like Jonathan Hankins. I think they're going to get a veteran defensive lineman in here, just in case that shallow defensive line class in the draft isn't enough. Then you can't really double back and help yourself with the interior of the defensive line. And I think it's just that important for them to learn how to stop the run and get somebody in here, instead of depending on the draft where you might look up and that guy's gone. And then you have to go to your next option. So I think that part of the team should be dressed with a veteran in free agency. You guys make sure you tap in every single day here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. All right, man, it's all about free agency. It's all about the draft. It's all about tags. We're going to be playing the hits about this over the next couple of months. So I'm just telling you, tomorrow, whatever news drops and whatever Trent has to say about the tag and not tagging guys, that's what we'll have, because I think that's going to be the subject here in the city for a good little while. You guys make sure you take care of yourself, and see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.